Hello and welcome to a quick overview of the Star Wars CCG inventory web app that I created. So let's go ahead here and sign in. This app was created to kind of track my card collection as well as the decks that I have built, the virtual cards that I've built, and as I move them around, find out where everything is going. The first thing you see when you log in is just an overview of your collection, your virtual cards and your V-slips in different tabs. As you click through your collection, you'll see different variants of each card. So white border, black border, Japanese foils, and then the amount of each card that you owned. From this screen, you can also adjust manually individual increments of cards. So if you add a single card to your collection or take one away, you can adjust it here quickly. You'll see as you scroll down, there's different statuses for cards. So you can see which cards are being used in decks or backing virtual cards. The goal in this overview is to just give you a good idea of your whole collection and where everything is allocated. Sorting is also available to see cards in use quickly, cards that are used as backing quickly, or cards that are available. The web app will also track variants of cards, so which white border card you used as a backing or a black border to keep track of all of your different card types. The next tab is the virtual tab. This gives you an overview of built virtual cards. So a backing card with a virtual slip on top of it. You can see what the backing cards are and then where those cards are allocated, whether they're available to be put in decks or if they're in decks, which decks those are. The virtual slips tab is an expansion of that. These are just the front slips of virtual cards that you have made, whether they're available in that they have not been added to a backing card yet, or if they're in use. You can also see foil virtual slips, those that come from the PC. It also gives you an overview of outdated slips. These are slips that you printed at one point on the date, and now there's been an errata that makes them out of date. And it'll give you a report and allow you to reprint those slips so you can keep your built decks up to date. Key to the success of using this web app is an accurate count of your physical cards. You can manually add cards one by one. This is not necessarily practical for most collections, as hundreds or thousands of cards may be needed. But when you add maybe a single card, you're allowed to select what variant of that card you're adding, whether it's a white border or a black border, foil, etc. You can also build virtual cards manually and add foil slips from the PC manually. So if you got a slip at an event, you can add it to your collection here and then use it later as a backing card. Building a virtual card manually is as simple as finding which card it is in the collection. This will then give you a choice of the backing card. It'll populate with the recommended backing card. And if the virtual slip is not made, you can create one and set the date that you're creating it. For half slips or C slips, you cannot change the physical backing card, but for full slip cards, you can search and manually change your backing card to any card of the same side that you want, and you're able to create it. It will then add to your collection, allocate the backing card to the virtual card. The Other thing you can do if you knew roughly when you've printed slips in the past is when you add your virtual card, you can set the date that the card was made. If it then is out of date because of an errata, it will warn you, but it will still allow you to make it so that you can then populate a list of cards you need to reprint. As mentioned, the accuracy of the count of physical cards is the key. You're able to import a CSV of those cards using a particular format. If you have your cards in any format, any count, please reach out. I will help you get them into the correct format and get them into the system. I want the success of this app to not be limited by people not being able to get their cards in the system. Please reach out. Once your collection is in, you can then import deck lists from GEMP using the import deck list. You export a deck list out of GEMP or pull it off the tournament deck list website. You can name it whatever you want, choose the text file. You're also able to include all of the cards under the starting effect, the shields and various cards outside the deck. It's imported, you'll see it in the deck list, and you can get a quick overview here of the cards that you've imported. Once a deck list is in, you can then go to My Decks to create a deck based on that deck list. This would allocate your physical and virtual cards to that deck. So you pick Build a New Deck, find the deck list from your deck list. Then you can choose to include the starting effect and the cards from outside the deck if those were included in the deck list. A lot of people will have their starting effect and their shields separate so that as they have multiple decks, they don't have to include them in every single deck. It's up to you how you want to proceed in building this and allocating the cards. You'll then be taken to the allocation screen where you can see the deck list and what actions you can do with each card. As a fair amount of cards really only have one action, a black border non-virtual card is just going to get added. There's an auto allocate that will attempt to allocate cards that don't have any choices needed. When a card slot has choices, the user needs to manually allocate what they want to do with that slot. This is generally virtual cards where multiple choices are needed. So a backing card being flexible or a virtual slip not existing, the user is then prompted to create a virtual slip and then build and allocate the card. This continues for each slot. You will also see if a card exists in another deck, you can choose to pull it from the deck or build a new virtual card depending on if you have a backing card available. As you continue down the allocation, this process continues for each card. When there's virtual cards with set backing cards, you're limited to picking that backing card specifically, but you can pick the variant that you want. So half slips, C slips, those type of cards. You'll also encounter situations where you don't have a backing card or a physical card in your inventory available. In this case, both copies of this card are in other decks, so you'll have to borrow them from the deck or add it to a missing card list that keeps track of cards that you want to buy. In this case, we'll take it from a deck and go ahead and continue on the allocation process, making choices for each card. As is the case when you have multiple decks, cards can be in several decks. Picking which one you want and which deck it's from is part of the allocation process. In a lot of these examples, I'm simply using the default card for these full slip virtual cards. By all means, that's not necessarily what you would do in practice. You may have bulk commons that you use. The choice is entirely yours. It is going to track which card you are using regardless. The system will do the same thing with non-virtual cards if you have multiple variants. The one you select is the one that is allocated, and in your My Collection overview, you will see that allocation tracked. Once a build is fully allocated, you are able to tell the system to complete the build, and that will create a summary of what you've built. It'll give you a very broad overview that which cards you're pulling out of inventory, how many virtual cards you're going to make, and then how many cards you're using from other decks. Completing the build will give you a summary page and tell you where cards are coming from, what virtual cards you're building along with the backing cards that you selected, and then your cards from inventory, both physical cards that have no virtual slip and ones that do. I know people organize their cards in different ways, whether it's alphabetically or by set or by type. You can sort what you want and then print the entire summary. So you can then take this to your physical cards, find the cards you need, pull them out, build your deck. Back in the My Decks overview page, you'll see the new deck there. You can get back to your summary page. The My Decks also has a summary here. This is just a quick view of the cards in your deck currently, as well as the backing cards for the virtual cards. This can be printed as well, so if you need a reference of any kind. You'll see now, as we built the EBO deck, an edit was made to the No Idea deck as we took two of the cards from that deck and put them into the EBO deck. So the system has tracked those cards moved. You can see with other decks as well, as you move cards around, that they are tracked. So you know if you have to share cards between decks, what deck currently has those cards and what cards go back and forth. Whether building a deck or editing decks, the My Tasks tab is your outstanding actions that you have not resolved yet. So we built a new deck. We tagged that we needed to print a bunch of virtual slips. This is the list of those slips that we needed to print. You can choose to print them individually. You can create a vkit list. This downloads the list that you can import right into the PC's vkit to print those slips. You can also then mark the entire outstanding V-slips as complete, telling the system that you printed them. This My Task tab will also show V-slips that need reprinting. These are outdated slips that have had erratas and are no longer accurate. In this case, these cards are from a previously built deck, and an errata has been issued since then. So the system is telling you that those cards are out of date. You can choose to create a vkit list to print those or mark them all as complete when done. The last thing is the missing physical cards. These are cards that you've either tagged as wanting to add to your missing list, or cards that were taken from one deck and moved to the other because you didn't have the inventory. You can mark those off as acquired if you were to purchase or borrow them. Otherwise, they can sit on your list and you'll know what decks they're needed for. When you have decks that have borrowed cards or have had cards borrowed from other decks, in this case, you can see 2 cards were borrowed from the Shadow Collective deck. If you wanted to then rebuild that deck back to your list, you can edit it. You'll see in there the cards that were removed. You could also delete lines if needed, but at this point, you can pick the card to take back into this deck from the decks that borrowed it, or if there's multiple decks, pick which deck you want to take it from. You'll also see situations where maybe only 1 copy of 2 was taken, that kind of thing. You can then complete this. It gives you the summary of your deck again. When you look at it now, it's complete, and you'll see in the 2 decks that those cards were in, they've been pulled out again. So you have visibility as to where those cards are now and which decks are lacking cards or are not fully complete. The edit can also be used to change a deck list card by card. If you wanted to change just a single line item, you can delete it and then add a different card as well. So that's just a quick overview of this inventory management tool. You also can go into the user settings and change your password, download all your data as a backup, or re-upload a backup as needed. For this entire system and project, the big thing again is getting your actual cards in the system. I'm here to help. Please reach out. I want you to be using this. If you want to use it,